Hi everyone, welcome to Emma, a true infidelity story. I'm excited to share a new story with you. A cute dog instinct can often uncover truths that humans might overlook. When I began a new relationship, everything seemed flawless. But then my cute dog, Louie, started behaving oddly around my partner. Initially, I brushed it off, but soon enough everything shifted. Louie's reactions began to unveil a significant secret. What was this secret? You'll need to hold on for a bit longer to discover. Once my solitude brought me tranquility, living alone in my house, wrapped in the silence of those walls, filled me with confidence. Yes, even after my children had crafted their own lives, and I had lost my spouse years ago, I didn't feel desolate in that emptiness. Yet as time passed, I recognized that while solitude had once been soothing, it was gradually causing me to lose my essence. Something vital was absent. Therefore, when I met Henry, I believed I had reached a pivotal moment in my journey. Henry was the most compassionate, attentive, and considerate individual I had ever encountered. Every gesture he made provided a sense of comfort, and his words brought forth genuine smiles. Each moment in his company felt like rediscovering something I had long thought lost in my mind. I separated the life I shared with my children and Louie from the serene moments I savored with Henry. I found myself spending more time with him, and believed I was reclaiming the emotions that had dwindled through the years. However, everything began to shift when Louie met him. Louie had been my unwavering companion for 13 years, never straying from my side. This loyal friend had been with me through every chapter of my life. But once Henry entered the picture, things took on an unexpected twist. At first, Jack exhibited minor signs of agitation. As Henry approached for the first time, Louie would impatiently scratch at the ground, his gaze locked onto him. I didn't give it much thought. He just needs a little time to acclimate to a new face. It will pass, I'm sure, I assured Henry. But as time went on, Louie's behavior escalated. One evening during dinner, Louie suddenly dashed over to us, barking fiercely. He faced Henry baring his teeth. Honey overtook me as I glanced at Henry, desperately trying to offer reassurance, though unease simmered within. He'll adjust, I insisted, but a troubling feeling was building inside me. Henry had never faced such a response before. He doesn't seem to like me, does he? He said with a slight smile. While that smile provided some comfort, my inner disquiet only grew. No, he doesn't seem to understand, I replied softly. Louie's increasing hostility towards Henry left me anxious about our future, so much that one evening as Henry sat down, Louie's tail went wild. The moment he barked, Louie was trying to communicate something. But what exactly? Why had my affectionate cute dog suddenly turned against Henry? One day at the park, while walking, Jack again attempted to distance himself from Henry with every step. I chided myself for bringing him too often, thinking it wasn't right. But then a startling occurrence unfolded. Jack abruptly dropped to the ground as if ready to pounce. His barking and unsettling stares intensified with each passing moment. Henry noted the change, saying, "You need to address this." Yet despite my willingness to heed his advice, an internal barrier stopped me. I sensed something was off with Louie, yet he seemed to convey an entirely different message. I began to understand my relationship with Henry wasn't running as smoothly as it should. Louie's reactions were confounding. Something was brewing between my boyfriend and my cute dog, something troubling. But what could it be? The nagging suspicion weighed heavily on my mind. As Henry became more familiar, certain aspects still eluded me. Each time I studied Louie's wary glances, I felt there was an underlying problem. As time went by, Louie's peculiar behavior towards Henry unsettled me further. The more we got to know each other, the more intense Louie's response became. It escalated from mere barking to a clear perception of Henry as a threat. Whenever he came closer, it felt as though an internal voice within Louie was warning me that this man was hiding something from me. One morning after breakfast, Henry and I found ourselves alone in the house. Louie was once again watching Henry from across the room, barking furiously. I sensed a need to act, yet I felt unsure of how to proceed. Henry tried to reassure me, stating, "I think Louie just needs more time to get to know me," while he smiled. A shadow of concern lingered in that smile. He was attempting to calm my nerves, but I couldn't shake my worry. Henry's frequent presence in my home complicated things. I believed everything would settle into place, yet my inner tension was growing. Despite Louis's persistent warnings, I continued to allow Henry more access into my life. But the more I tried to keep him at bay, the more I recognized this was not merely Louis's strange behavior. I had begun to change as well. In those days I found myself alone more often than ever. Louis had always been my comforting friend during times of solitude, but now something had shifted. No matter how many conversations I had with Louis throughout the day, he gazed at me differently. He seemed to be sending me signals about an unknown mystery, yet I couldn't decipher what that meant. Even around Henry, Louis was ever on edge. After some time, I began to feel like deciphering these reactions. On one evening when Henry was home, Louis's nerves were even more frayed for the first time. Louis did not only bark, but he took a couple of steps toward Henry, baring his teeth and growling. Scared, Henry stepped back, and there was uneasiness in his eyes. I silently watched this scene, feeling a lot of fear and concern. Inside, Louis was telling something, but what was some kind of danger close to Henry? Was it just cute dog instincts, or did Louis know more? With all that had taken place, I was finally alone with Henry. I guess he still hasn't accepted me, he calmly said. I smiled for him, but inside I felt that something within us had begun to break. Perhaps he just needs more time, I told him. Yet this wasn't some sort of easy and ephemeral explanation. Something really was wrong with Louis and his problems. Name was Henry deeply inside. I felt it. I wanted to learn something about Henry's past, yet had no idea how to go about it. There were many questions I'd never asked him before. What did he live through in the course of former relationships? And why was he so standoff toward Louis? Each one of these questions seemed to rise into whispers from inside my body. One day when I had to leave my cute dog alone at home, I decided to do something. I started to observe Henry more closely. Then I noticed that his calm expressions no longer deceived me. He was constantly avoiding something, and there was something else in his eyes. Slowly I began to learn more about Henry's past. At first I hadn't wanted to check Henry's social media, but eventually, one night before going to bed, I found his phone. An inner feeling whispered to me that I needed to investigate him. I quietly took his phone and looked at all his messages. But contrary to what I expected, this was not just the first clue given to me about Henry's past. In his conversations with his ex-girlfriend, I saw that he was still obsessed with her and continued to write to her constantly. Additionally, there were messages about lies in Henry's previous relationships. Although Henry always tried to reassure me, I had realized that Louis's reactions actually reflected what I felt. Would I start asking Henry the questions I had never asked before? This was the answer to the big problem that had already begun. To solve this, I had a clue. I needed to pay attention to Louis's constant warnings. The restlessness inside me increased a little more every day. The distrust of Henry's Louis had now become a visual anxiety. With my own inquiry, I began to doubt that I had what Henry told me I had this relationship with him. Suddenly, to another character, I began to realize that it was a kind of blindness for me to ignore the warnings of Louis. He was always a loyal friend who told me the truth. His reactions told me something was wrong, but I wanted to ignore them. But the more I had imagined, much more important than I had imagined, it was difficult to find a solution. After a clue in my relationship with Henry, my suspicion of his past was elaborated. When I woke up at night, I found something in the silence of the house. The Louis becomes quiet when it is alone. Patient Henry is seen from the corners of the dark. What happened to Henry? Without seeing, I felt that everything had changed. Now I needed to understand what was going on. One day, Henry left to talk about his past. When I brought the subject, his face changed. He tried to close the subject quickly. At that time I felt something clear. No matter how much Henry tried to trust me, there was zero in what he said. My suspicion was confirmed. Lies were used to overlap each other with the play that were experienced in my past relationships, and to overlap each other with my continuous communication with my ex-girlfriend. One evening I decided to leave Henry alone at home again. But this time everything would be different. As Henry was leaving, he wanted to tell me something. But I looked at him with suspicion. That strange feeling inside me intensified. When Henry left, I started watching Louis. At that moment I realized that Louis had become even more restless with Henry's departure. Unlike previous days, my cute dog seemed to sense something. His eyes were as if they were telling me something. He had never been so determined and attentive. I focused solely on him. After a while, I found out that Henry was messaging his ex-girlfriend. Without thinking too much, I decided to find and check his phone again. My eyes focused on another truth that allowed me to follow him constantly. Louis had always given me clues, but I hadn't seen them. The messages on Henry's phone revealed his ongoing connection with his ex-girlfriend and the lies in his past relationships. I had realized that much of what Henry told me did not reflect the truth. One evening as I saw that when Henry came again, I had to ask Tabar's reactions. I had to ask him about it, keeping Henry away from my cute dog. I expressed her feelings. Henry, I know what is going on. I can no longer tolerate these lies. I said. Henry's face turned yellow. He was just silent. After a while, there was a long silence, and finally he confessed. Yes, I made some mistakes in my past, but I love you. I really love you, he said. Hearing this, I got some relief but also a shock. Henry only tried to fall in love with me, but he was really after something else. With Henry's confession, the veil was raised on my eyes. However, he said that he loved me. The relationship he had created on his previous mistakes was shaken at his core. At that time, I realized that Tabar's mistrust was very appropriate. I took a long time to feel that Henry was not the right person, but now everything was clear. I felt that there is nothing but being next to someone who tried to cheat me. Actually, the tendency of my loyal friend was telling the truth. In Henry's previous relationships, lies made him even more superficial. As I came to know, he pretended to love someone whom he did not really love, and he hid everything by not telling the truth. My suspicion was finally revealed. We needed to trust each other and talk openly about everything. But at this point there was nothing left to return. I even paid attention to it. Now the most important thing was to face the truths within yourself. The silence between Henry and me was one of the most difficult moments, with my feelings all mixed up. When I heard what he said, I realized that everything I had experienced every moment was just woven with lies. He said he loved me, but even at that moment, it was as if he hadn't even asked himself how honest he was with the person he loved. He hadn't spent enough time getting to know me, hadn't considered the darkness and shortcomings in his past. That's why, unfortunately, Louis's fearful looks were right lost in these thoughts. Even I couldn't find peace in that darkness. Henry's eyes for a moment reflected all the truths to me. Even at the moment when he thought he loved himself, he had taken away the trust and sense of security within me. No matter how much he loved, the lies he told me always left a bigger wound. I began to slowly realize that everything in my mind was built on a lie. The silicocyclist Louis gave me had finally merged with the truths I had determined. He was only showing me the right way. His instincts gave him the ability to distinguish right from wrong in every move. He had helped me find the truth in this matter. I had understood Louis's fear of Henry for the first time in such a way. That night I was of the opinion to talk to Henry one last time. I spent hours together at home and flowed with thoughts. One, too complex and intense, even felt the need to run outside for air. But alas, now everything had to be delved into deeply. The lies, the secrecy and the suspicions had to come to an end in my own regard. Henry sought to lay life on top of past pits. I resolved at that moment to bottle up all the fears and put out a final question. Do you love me, Henry? If you do, why lie so much? Cover your past. There was horror in his eyes. It was as if the biggest secret of his life was about to come into the open, and he looked away. Then for a moment he just went silent. At that moment, he did not seem to know what to say. Behind the background of the suspicions and the truth that came into light, Henry was fully aware of the helplessness and insecurity within him. He took a few deep breaths, then finally replied, "Yes, I love you, but I was afraid of losing you. That's why I wanted to hide my past. I didn't want to hurt you. I really thought about it. But as I got to know you, my love for you grew. That's why what I said was only to protect you." Though his eyes bore a glint of plainness to what is behind the statement, I really could not feel the same about it. The way he had lied and hidden for so long wiped clean any semblance of reality behind those words. As I listened to Henry's explanations, I realized even better how complicated everything was when my cute dog, Louis, slowly approached us. Louis was always telling me the truth. I read the meaning in his eyes, not just as an animal's but as a friend's. Although the darkness behind Henry's lies upset me, the only thing that kept me from feeling alone in the darkness was Louis's loyal gaze. After a while, when I talked to Henry, the brokenness inside me began to heal somehow. But emotionally becoming weak meant that I wanted to believe and trust what Henry said. At that point, I understood the difficulties of love and trust better. If the foundation of a relationship is shaken this much, no matter how much time passes, it is not possible to rebuild it. Above all, I had to make a decision. When I last spoke with Henry, I told him, "Yes, I love you, Henry, but what I feel now has gone beyond love. I am lost in an ugly place among the lies of the past. I know that every wrong needs to come to an end now. Trust is the very foundation of any relationship, and I cannot ever think of rebuilding that trust with you." That was a heavy blow for him. For me, saying those words was essential, so I could know for myself the right choice had been made at that moment. I knew our relationship was over. I had said goodbye to Henry one last time. Although the faithful gaze of my cute dog accompanied my departing heart, only Louis's eyes told me that everything was all right. He was the messenger of truth. He helped me see the truth about Henry, and also about myself. It forced me to stand in front of truths, and became an important juncture in my life. The truths were lighting my way now. If this story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us craft more engaging stories for you.